One is we saw principle of superposition and
the vector sum and scalar sum of Coulomb's law.
And we saw Coulomb's law in vector form, which is very,
Vector
very
form.
important, right? Is this fine? Okay. So we'll do one more problem based on the principle of superposition, then we'll go on to the next concept. Okay. So there is an example problem which is based on it. Let me discuss this. So the topic principle of superposition, your textbook is given as force between multiple charges. So it is given as the force between multiple charges. That's what I explained it as principle of superposition. Okay. Now let's try to solve this problem. So consider three charges Q1, Q2 and Q3, each equal to Q at the vertices of an equilateral triangle of side L. What is the force on the charge capital Q with the same sign as Q placed at the centroid of the triangle? What is the answer? You can directly tell me. So read the question carefully. There are three charges and all three are point charges. Where are they placed? They are placed at the vertices of an equilateral triangle of side L, right? Now they are asking what will be the force experienced by the fourth charge capital Q which is placed at the centroid. What will be the answer?
0, sir.
0. Right. Answer is 0, and you people know why it is. Right. So this is a simple one. I'm not doing it. Let's proceed to the next one. In your textbook, we have used too much of vectors. You can instead follow the method which I taught you. So let's do the next one. So what is the question? Consider three charges Q, Q and minus Q placed at the vertices of an equilateral triangle as shown in figure 1.10. What is the force on each charge? Okay, so I hope you guys are able to understand the question. So how many particle system is this? It's a 3-particle system. Now what are they expecting? If you see the question carefully, what is the force experienced by each charge? In the sense, each charge will experience a force due to the remaining 2 charges, right? So if it is an n-particle system, each charge will experience a force due to the remaining n-1 particles. In a similar way, here each charge will experience the force due to the other 2. One more important point, in your exam, these things will not be given. Since it is a solved example in your textbook, these things will not be given at all. Since it's a solved example, they have given it. Okay. So let's try to solve the problem with the given data. I'm not taking the diagram into consideration. I only take the configuration, that is where minus Q is placed. So Q and Q are placed here, minus Q is placed here, and they have labeled these points as A, B and C. Okay. Now, I'm going to calculate the force experienced by the charge at A. So I'm going to calculate the force experienced by the charge at A. So let's give numbers to them. First charge, second charge and third charge. So what will be the direction of force experienced by the charge at A due to the charge at C? The charge at C, will it impose an attractive force or a repulsive force?
Attractive.
Charge at C, it will give an attractive force. So the force will act along, I told you an important point, along the line joining both the charges. Never forget that, okay? So it will act along the line joining both the charges. What should be the notation I need to give for it? If force experienced by the first charge due to third, F13 or F31? F1, 3. Right? In a similar way, what will be the force experienced by the charge at 1 due to the charge at 2? It will be a attractive or a repulsive force. They charge at 2, da. It should be a repulsive force. You told repulse only, yeah? It's repulsive. Okay. So due to the charge at C, it is attractive. Here it is going to be repulsive. Because they are like charges. What is the name of this force? F1. I want you all to be clear with this. Is there anyone still having a doubt with this? Please let me know. Why is online? Everyone is clear.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if I take a free body diagram of point A alone, F13 is in this direction and F12 is in this direction. Since it is equilateral triangle, this angle is going to be 60 degrees. What is going to be the complementary angle?
120.
So the supplementary angle is going to be 120 degrees. So this angle is 120. I hope it is clear. I'll solve this problem in two ways actually. Whichever is comfortable for you guys can take it. Okay. So whenever you have two co-initial vectors, okay, listen to this point carefully. There are two kinds of situations you will face in vector always. You can have two vectors which are continuous in order. What do you mean by continuous in order? The ending point of the first vector will be the starting point of second vector. If you face a situation of that sort, what law should come to your mind? If you see a situation where you will get triangle law of addition in mind. If you see a situation like this, you should think of triangle law of addition. Okay. Secondly, if you see two co-initial vectors and you want to find the resultant. If you have two co-initial vectors, what do you mean by co-initial? Co means same, initial is same starting point. So if they have the same starting point, then you need to think of what are the other laws? You need to think of parallelogram law of vectors. So parallelogram law of vectors resultant, what is the formula for it? If there is a vector A like this and then another vector B which are inclined with respect to each other at theta, then the resultant will be somewhere in between them. And the value of R is given as root of A square 2 times AB cos theta, where theta is the angle between both the vectors. Okay. Now, I have F12 here, I have F13 here. What is the magnitude of F12? What is the magnitude of F12? So F12 means the force acting between first and the second charge. What is the formula? 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 into Q2. What are the two charges? Q into Q divided by, what is R here? L square. So magnitude wise, I hope you guys are clear. Direction is taken care by vectors. We have already drawn the arrow mark. Now what is the magnitude of F13 vector, guys? 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into, see, look at the way I am going to write. Magnitude of Q into magnitude of minus Q. Okay, divided by L square. But what is going to be the answer? It is still the same value. So from this, can I say F13 is equal to F12 is equal to, can I call it as F? I hope you guys are clear, right? So the diagram, if I draw, this is F and this is also F, and the angle is 120 degrees, right? Now tell me, what is the angle between these two vectors? Is it 120 degrees or 60 degrees? Which one should I take into consideration? I should take 120 degrees into consideration. Okay. So if you guys have to visualize how it is, listen. What is the meaning of angle? Angle is how much rotation is made by one line with respect to another fixed line. If there are two vectors like this, initially how much is the angle between them? 0 degrees. Look at them, the arrow marks are in the same direction. This is F, this is F, that is F12, F13. Now what I did is I kept F12 fixed and F13 is rotated in such a way that I am stopping it at this point. So how much is the rotation I have made? I made a rotation of 120 degrees. So I've seen people making a mistake of taking it as 60. Don't do that mistake. The reason being cos 60 and cos 120 are not same. Cos 60 is half, cos 120 is minus half. Your answer will completely change. So please be careful with it, okay? Now, the resultant is going to be in this direction. Let me call that as f dash. Then what is the value of f dash according to parallelogram law? Root of f square plus f square plus 2 into f cos of the angle between them, that is 120 degrees. So it will be root of f square plus 2f square into cos 120 is minus half, this and this will get cancelled. So minus f square and f square are also gone. Root of f square is going to give you f. Are you able to understand? So it experiences a net force of how much value? The charge at point A experiences a net force due to the charges at B and C of how much value? Of B in what direction? The direction I've drawn here. In this direction. Okay, but you have to give name, you have to mention it in the exam. I'll tell you how you are supposed to write. Please make a note of it. So I would suggest you all to revise vectors concept from last year. The videos are there. Please go through them before you come to the next class. Tell me.
So what is the conclusion here, sir?
Conclusion in the sense, it is experiencing a net force of F making an angle of, you guys have to tell me how much is this angle. So in physics, what does direction mean? In physics, direction doesn't mean north, east, west, south. You have to mention the angle made by the resultant with any one of the vectors. That is the meaning of direction. Okay, because here I showed you the exam how you show that this is the direction. Every got how are we supposed to report it? Do you guys remember the formula? Tan alpha is equal to b sin theta a plus b cos theta, right? So you need to do that when you have vectors of two different magnitudes. Here there is an important rule, please make a note of it. I'll be using this rule in the further derivation also. Please make a note, guys, on the other side also. If two vectors of same magnitude, I repeat, if two vectors of same magnitude are acting at a point. So what do I mean by acting at a point? They are co-initial vectors, okay? So if two vectors of same magnitude are acting at a point, comma, the resultant of these two vectors will be an angular bisector. The resultant of these two vectors will be an angular bisector. Is that clear? It is only when both the forces are of both the vectors are of equal magnitude. In this case, fortunately, yes, they both are of same magnitude. So what will be the direction? So the resultant is making an angle 60 degrees with either of the forces. So you have to mention the answer like this. So f dash is equal to f making an angle, how much? 60 degrees with either of the forces. What are the two forces? F13 and F12. So this is the conclusion. Okay. This is F, okay. Okay, 1 minute. See, F is not given in the question. What is the value of F that we have assumed? 1 by 4 epsilon naught Q square by L square. This is the magnitude. Okay. So I'll give you exactly 3 minutes time. I want you to find out what is the force experienced by the charge at C. You guys have to report the answer for the force experienced by the charge at C along with proper direction. Make it fast. Sorry, no? Root 3f. How did you get it? Very good. So what will be the angle in this case? It will be 60. So when the angle is 60 and 120, look at the difference in answers. How many of you solved it? Right? Right? Anybody online with the answer?
F root
Who's
3.
this galaxy? Yeah, root 3. Who's galaxy 8 and S? Who's galaxy 8 and S? So root 3f, I hope you guys are clear. Why is it so? So the force experienced by the charge at point C due to 1 will be in which direction? Will it be towards 1 or away from 1? It will be towards 1. What is the name of that force? F31. The force experienced due to 2. It is also towards only because it's going to be attractive force, right? F32. So it is making an angle of 60 degrees. I hope by now you are clear that both the forces will have the same magnitude because same combination of charges and same distance. So angle is 60. What will be the resultant? Root of f square plus 2 times f square cos 60, which is going to give you root 3f. I hope it is clear, right? So similarly on P, you guys can calculate it. It will be the same as that of first charge. So root 3f in which direction? When I say direction, you need to mention the angle. Root 3f. Don't say downward.
30 degree
Root
with
3f make,
F31 and F3.
making an angle of 30 degrees with either of the vectors f31 and f32. So you should always mention in terms of angle. Shall I proceed? So this is
Yes,
all
sir.
about the force acting between multiple. I hope it is clear. Surya, what is the doubt? Clear? Angular bicycle, same force. No? I told you, I gave you a statement. If two forces are of same magnitude, calculation. The angle between the resultant and either of the vectors is 30. You should take the angle between the vectors to calculate the resultant. Did you make this mistake? You took this as you took it as cos 30. The 30 degrees will come only after you find the magnitude of the resultant. So for I'm repeating it again, for finding the magnitude of resultant, always use the angle between the vectors. Cos 60 or so. So because this is 60 degrees, you should take this angle. That is angle between the vectors. In a root of a square plus b square plus 2ab cos of how much? Cos 60 is half. So 1 by 2 and 2 will get cancelled. F square plus f square plus f square. So root of 3 times f square, that is root 3f. Got it? Yeah. So that's all about the force between multiple charges. So now we'll move to the next concept that's called as electric field. Okay. So electric here is derived from the word charge, and what do you mean by field? Area or the region, right? So what do you think electric field will be? If I ask you what is magnetic field, what will you say? If I ask you what is magnetic field, what will you say? The area around the magnet where you can sense some magnetic force. In a similar way, what do you think electric field is? Electric field is a region around a charge or a charge distribution where you can sense some electrostatic force. So please write it down. The region around a charge, or charge distribution, region around a charge or charge distribution where the electrostatic force can be experienced, is called electric field. I hope it is clear. Right. The next terminology that we are going to see is electric field intensity. So what do you think is the difference between the previous one and this one? Electric field is just a definition. It speaks only about the region around the charge or the charge distribution. But what do you think electric field intensity is? It speaks about the extent to which the force can act. Means it will have a mathematical expression associated. Is it clear? So let me take a simple example and explain it. Suppose I have a positive charge. Okay. I have a positive point charge. Now what do you think will happen to another charge brought close to it? It will experience a force. One way you can say it is experiencing force is because you can apply Coulomb's law. Right? If suppose I place a charge here, which are at a reasonable distance where they can interact, I can say force is going to act on them because of Coulomb's law, because F is equal to K Q1 Q2 divided by R square. The same concept can be visualized with a different perspective. How are we going to do it? Now, my concern is not about the second charge. What is present around the first charge according to the definition of electric field? So you have something called as electric field around it. You have a region which is equally distributed, so that you try to bring any other charge, it will start exerting force. So if I take this as a point charge, there will be a region around it. Right? In this region, wherever you try to place another charge, that other charge will start experiencing force. If that particular region is existing, the technical name given to that region is what is called as electric field. Okay. Now, the charge which is generating the so-called electric field is what is called as the source charge, because this is the source for the electric field. Okay. So to find the strength of the source charge, what I need is another charge, right? So I'm doing a testing process to find out how much is the strength of this electric field. So I have a test charge, let's say it is outside like this. If I have a test charge like this, then what do you think will happen to this test charge now? The name of this charge is test charge because you are using to find the strength of the electric field due to the source charge. So if I place a test charge at the location which I mentioned here, what do you think is going to happen? If you ask me, nothing will happen. Reason? It is outside the influence of the electric field. Every electric field has a particular range, right? So this is the maximum range till the dotted lines are the maximum range till which the source charge can exert a force. Now, what will happen if I move this discharge into the electric field of the source charge?
There will be attraction or repulsion.
Okay. So you can say it will attract or repel, but one important point to be noted is the discharge that we are using here by default is always positive. So whenever they mention the word discharge, by default it is always positive. Please make a note of it. Discharge by default is a positive charge. Okay. So in this case, I took the example of source charge also to be positive. So what will happen to the test charge? It will start experiencing a repulsive force, right? So in the story, can I say test charge experiences a repulsive force? Okay, accepted. Now, if I want to calculate the electric field intensity, then what do I do with this force? That's what the question is. So, if I have to find the electric field intensity, the definition goes like this. If you are able to calculate the amount of attractive or the repulsive force and take its magnitude, okay, then divide it with the magnitude of the test charge, Q naught. Okay. Test charge is represented by with the symbol Q naught. So, if I am able to calculate the force between both the charges and divide it with the magnitude of whom? Magnitude of the test charge, then this particular parameter is what is called as the electric field intensity, and it is given by the symbol E. Okay. So, how do you define
can you
electric field
repeat the first point of this?
Which point?
Magnitude.
Magnitude.
After, yes.
What I'm trying to say is, listen, there is a source charge Q here, there is a test charge Q naught, then there is some distance of separation between them. So one thing is accepted, right? The test charge will start experiencing a force due to the source charge. So if you calculate that force and divide it with the magnitude of whom? The magnitude of the test charge, then that particular ratio is what we call it as the electric field intensity. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Why can't we use negative charge?
Sir, is source charge also defaultly positive, sir? By default positive?
No. Source charge can be negative. No. If
Okay,
that is the
sir.
case, we are restricting things to one case. No. Source charge can be positive or negative. Test charge has to be positive. So here there is a question
Okay,
why
sir.
test charge should be taken only as positive. I'll try to explain in terms of magnetism. Okay. So I'm giving you a similarity. I'm using the word magnetism again and again because I assume you guys are familiar with it. Okay. So magnetism, what are the two poles present? North pole and south pole. So in magnet, north pole, in electric field, in magnet's north pole is the same as the positive charge in electrostatics. So magnetism, north pole, electrostatics, positive charge. South pole is similar to the negative charge. Have this point in your mind. Okay. Now, what is the direction of magnetic field? If I take a magnet, okay, if I have a magnet in my hand, then if I ask you to draw the magnetic field lines, what is the direction in which you are going to draw? The direction of magnetic field is away from the north pole towards the south pole, outside the magnet.
From north to
Yeah,
south.
outside the magnet. And south to north, inside the magnet.
Inside
So
the
we know that
magnet.
magnetic field lines always form a closed loop. Now I have a question. Who told you that magnetic field lines are always from north to south? Why couldn't it be from south to north? Who is deciding? What testing process did you do to find out?
Using another magnet.
What is the other magnet that you are going to use? With the help of other magnet, what are you going to find? It has nothing to speak about magnetic field lines. You should be able to arrive at a particular condition if something is given to you, some data is known to you. And are you guys able to understand what question I'm asking? Who told you that magnetic field is only from north to south? I will say it is from south to north. It's my choice. If this kind of an argument comes, then we need to have some deciding factor which is going to say, yes, this is the direction. So what do? You take a compass. Compass has what? A small needle, and the needle is a small bar magnet. It's a small magnet, right? It also has a north and a south pole. So if I take a compass and place it here, okay, what direction the compass, the north pole of the compass will be in which direction? Will it be towards the north pole or away from the north pole? If I place it here, exactly along the axis of the magnet. Guys on the other side, try to concentrate on this. This is a very important point. If I exactly place it in the axis, I'll call this as south pole, this as north pole. What will be the alignment? That is, if I take this arrow mark, this is a north pole, this is a south pole. Will the compass show this kind of a deflection or this kind of a deflection? First option or second option in this scenario?
Second
So
option.
this is the bar magnet. North. This is the bar magnet. Listen, I hope you guys are able to see. North pole, south pole. I place the compass like this. Initially, the compass is like this. North pole, arrow mark is north pole for both magnet and this thing. Will the north pole of the compass turn like this, or it will go away? It goes
Away,
away.
Away,
Then
sir.
what? You keep a point here. Then you will take this magnet, and what will you do? Then you will take this magnet and we will place it here. Will you do it or not? When I place it here, what will be the direction in which the north pole of the compass will turn? So initially when I placed it along the axis, it was like this. If I move the
will
compass
turn
here, you can
upwards.
observe that the north pole is slightly tilted like this. But never the north pole is going to be close to the north pole, a known fact. Right? Again, from the compass, if I keep a dot here, then if I keep moving the compass like this, I'll be getting set of dots. If I join all these dots, I will get a particular shape. And that particular shape is what we call it as magnetic field line. But who decided the direction here? Is it the north pole of the compass that is deciding the direction, or the south pole of the compass that is deciding the direction? It is the north pole. So north pole in electrostatics is similar to positive charge. That is the reason why test charge is always first. Purida. So whatever you are learning here is the same thing in magnetism also.
Sir,
In some questions they will say there is a unit place. Tell me.
sir, can you repeat the last point once more, sir? I'm getting confused there.
There is nothing to get confused. See, you are able to see the direction in which the north pole is going, north pole of the compass is going.
Yes, sir.
You are able to see this? No. So whatever is the direction in which the north pole of the compass is facing, that is going to be the direction of the magnetic field lines. That is the reason why you are saying the magnetic field lines are from north pole to the south pole. Now what I am trying to say is, in magnetic, north pole is similar to the positive charge in electrostatics. Okay.
Okay,
So
sir.
compass is here you have a separate test charge. The reason being, in magnetic, you know this point, right? Magnet cannot be broken into a monopole. You try to break a magnet into smaller pieces also, it is still going to exist as a dipole only. But the advantage with charge is you can have an isolated positive charge and an isolated negative charge, like how you have your ions in chemistry. Purida, when you bring two ions close together, they are going to form a bond. Same is the case here. Clear? Now you understood why it is only positive test charge? Okay. One more important point I have to mention here. Guys online, are you able to understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Nobody will
sir.
ask you why it is positive. Okay. It is for you guys to know. But if in the
Understood,
question it is mentioned, if in the question it is mentioned as a unit negative test charge, that is applicable only for that question. If nothing is mentioned, by default, it is positive. By default, it is positive. Okay. Now I have another question. The source charge is having an electric field around it. Will the test charge not have an electric field around it? it is also going to have, right? Like, see, for example, you have hydrogen and hydrogen. What kind of a bond are they going to form? Triple bond. Right, hydrogen and hydrogen. Hydrogen has one valence electron, other hydrogen has one valence electron. To attain stability, it is going to exist as H2. It is going to form a covalent bond. Right? How is it forming? One hydrogen atom's electron is here, the other hydrogen atom's electron is here. When you try to bring them close, what will happen? There should be an electrostatic. I'm just trying to relate it again. Hydrogen has a nucleus and an electron, except the other hydrogen also has a nucleus and an electron. Okay, let's speak in the terms of electrostatics. This nucleus will have a region around it called as the electric field. In a similar way, the other hydrogen atom will also have a region around it. If these two electric fields do not have an intersection, will they form a bond? No. So when they are coming close to each other, they are going to have some intersection. At that point, what exactly is the responsible reason for this bond to be formed? The so-called covalent bond. One thing that should have happened is electron and electron repulsion should have happened, but in spite of it, it is able to form a bond. Why? Because the nucleus of the first hydrogen atom is trying to pull this no. In a similar way, the nucleus of this is trying to pull this no. Are you not able to form a bond? If they come even more close, what do you think will happen? So there will be a particular extent. Let's say the nucleus of the first hydrogen is pulling the electron of the second hydrogen. The vice versa is happening. As a result of it, they will start moving close to each other. If they start moving even more close, what will happen? There will be an electron-electron repulsion and a nucleus-nucleus repulsion. Why is it happening? Because this charge, this nucleus is having the same power as that of the other nucleus, because they both are similar type. In a similar way, if I take this as one hydrogen atom and this as one hydrogen atom, I told you source charge had electric field, but then why not a question that the test charge is also having an electric field around it? I could have raised a question, but we never asked about it. So for this experiment to be done, one important point to be kept in your mind is the magnitude of test charge should be as small as possible. Please make a note of this point. The magnitude of test charge should be as small as possible, due to which what do you think will happen? The region of the electric field due to the test charge will be negligible. Means it cannot create any effect on whom? On the source charge. Okay, that is why if you see in your textbook, they would have given it like this. Electric field, there is an alternate definition. They would have given it as limit Q0 tends to 0, F divided by Q0. So here Q0 is tending to 0, it's not 0. It's a very, very, very small value. It's a negligible value. So if you understand this chapter, you can understand your chemistry and organic chemistry as well. Okay. Shall I move on? So this is all about electric field. Now the next question. So you understood the concept of electric field, right? Electric field intensity. Now I am going to discuss about electric field intensity due to a point charge. Now I am going to derive a mathematical expression for the electric field intensity due to a point charge. Okay. So if I have a charge like this and I have a test charge Q0 placed at a distance r from it. Okay. The same story again, there will be electric field around this. Okay. Now what is the definition of electric field telling us? You calculate the force between the system of charges and divide it with the magnitude of test charge. So what is going to be the force between these 2 point charges according to Coulomb's law? 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught charge of the magnitude of source charge into magnitude of test charge, the whole divided by r square. Sorry, by r square. The whole divided by Q0. Right, what will get cancelled? Q0 and Q0 are gone. So Q divided by 4 pi epsilon naught r square is going to be the magnitude of electric field due to a point charge. So this value is very, very important. We'll be using it at many places. Now there are some important questions we need to answer. Now we saw what is electric field intensity, right? We saw what is the mathematical equation. Now we need to answer what type of a physical quantity it is. Is it a vector quantity or a scalar quantity? Electric field intensity, how are you saying it is a scalar quantity? It does. Because what is the definition of electric field intensity? It is a force divided by charge. We haven't found the direction. Electric field intensity, there is a direction. I was supposed to come to the point later. Okay. Now you think in the logic of definition and tell me. Electric field is a ratio of force and charge. So force is what kind of a quantity? Yesterday we discussed. Force is a vector quantity. When you divide a vector quantity with a scalar quantity, answer is a vector. So electric field intensity is also a vector quantity. It has a direction. It's a vector quantity. Okay, leave some space. I'll tell you what is the direction. Now, what is going to be the SI unit? You guys have to think again. Go back to the definition only. Force by Q naught. Force is measured in Newton per charge is measured in Coulomb. So Newton per Coulomb is what is the SI unit of it. Or I can write it as NC inverse. Okay. I'll give you an alternate unit also for it, but that you learn it only in the next chapter, but have it in your mind. It is also measured in volt per meter. It is also measured in volt per meter. Volt is a unit of potential difference and meter is a unit of length. So volt per meter. Okay. This we will see why it is so in the next chapter. But in this chapter, if you see the textbook, they will give you all the values only in Newton per Coulomb. But in your final exam, they might give you in either Newton per Coulomb or volt per meter. Both are same. Okay. Now, what is going to be the dimensional formula for it? I want you all to try it. So, what is the dimensional formula for this? Newton. M. What is Newton? You can think of force. Force is mass into acceleration. ml t minus 2 divided by Coulomb is ampere. Ampere into AT. So you will have ml t minus 3 a inverse. Okay, ml t minus 3 a minus 1. So this is the dimensional formula for whom? For the electric field intensity. Right? Now I told you to leave some space. No? So I told you electric field intensity is a vector quantity. Right? So when I say it is a vector quantity, it should have a direction associated. What do you think is the direction? Think in terms of magnetism example which I told you and tell me. In magnetism, whatever is the direction that is shown by the dash pole of the compass decided the direction of magnetic field. North pole of the compass. In a similar way, here the direction in which the positive charge is moving will be the direction of electric field. So direction of electric field is direction of electric field is given in the direction in which who will move? Positive test charge will move. The direction in which the positive test charge experiences force. If you want me to read it out, I'm reading it out. Direction of electric field is given in the direction in which the positive test charge will move. Now comes another question. we saw what is electric field. So here, this is the definition which I told you. Electric field is equal to limit Q tends to 0, F divided by Q naught. Wherever in your textbook, no, if it is given in bold, it means it's a vector quantity. Okay. They'll not put an arrow mark on top, they'll give it in bold. So they would have mentioned the point here why the source charge should, test charge should be small. The only reason is because it should not disturb the alignment of the source charge. Okay. Next. Here they have given, see, for a positive charge, what is the direction of electric field, and for a negative charge, what is the direction of electric field. Instead of looking at them like a point, let's try to find out the direction by ourselves. Suppose, so write down the heading as direction of electric field intensity due to a positive charge, or else I will write it as due to an isolated positive charge. What do you mean by isolated? It has no interaction with the surroundings when you have an isolated positive charge. So I have an isolated positive charge. To find the direction of electric field, what am I supposed to do? So this positive test charge, whatever I'm trying to talk about, is this the source charge or the test charge? It is the source charge because I'm interested to study about it. So this is the source charge. So for me to find the direction in which the source charge electric field is there, I need another testing particle. That is the test charge. I bring the test charge, and what is the definition of direction of electric field? Tell us. Whatever is the direction in which the test charge will start moving due to the effect of source charge will give you the direction of electric field intensity of whom? Of the source or test charge? Of the source charge, right? So due to the positive charge, when I say test charge, by default it is positive. Will this test charge move away or will it move towards the negative? It will move away along the line joining. Along the line joining both the charges. So this is the direction in which it will experience a force. Right. Similarly, if I keep the test charge here, then this will be the direction. If I keep the test charge here, this is going to be the direction. So if you keep moving the test charge anywhere around the source charge, then what is the direction in which the electric field can be found? It will be in a radially outward or inward direction. It's called as radially outward direction. Why I am using the word radially is because if I take it as a sphere, it is acting along the radial direction, radius. So if I have to complete it, they'll be like this. And these lines are what are called as electric field lines. Like how you have magnetic field lines, here you have electric field lines. The other name for electric field lines is lines of force. Lines of force. I hope it is clear, right? Now our work is to find the direction of electric field due to a negative source. Simple. You have a negative source charge, you have a test charge by default which is positive. This test charge will start experiencing an attractive force. It will start moving towards. So if this is going to be the line along with the force is acting, it is going to act in this direction. Sorry. These are all very minor points, but they are very important in all the other derivations. Again, what these dotted lines are called as, they are also still called as electric field lines or lines of force. I hope it is clear, guys. Okay, let me show this in your textbook. This is what they have given. So if you take a positive test charge, it is away. The electric field is away from it. If you take a negative charge, it is towards it. So the electric field will also tell you another way, other thing. So it also gives you another information. Electric field tells you the direction in which it can attract or repel a positive charge. That is another way to. I hope it's clear, guys. So there is a point. For a positive charge, the electric field will be directed radially outwards from the charge. On the other hand, the source charge is negative. The electric field vector at a point points radially inward. Okay. The last point is, since the magnitude of force F on a charge Q due to the charge capital Q, here the small q according to the textbook means test charge, capital Q means source charge. Okay. Depends only on the distance r of the charge Q from the capital Q. The magnitude of electric field E also depends only on the distance r. That is what they are trying to say. Thus, at equal distances from the source charge Q, the magnitude of the electric field will always be a constant. Okay. So what they are trying to say is, if I take a particular point P, which is at the same distance r from the source charge, at any point P which is at the equal distance, the answer is going to be the same. The electric field at that point is going to be the same. Okay, we'll be using this in the last concept. Have this point in your mind. Okay, and if you join all these points, what is the shape you are going to get? Never restrict your thought to two dimension. It can be a sphere. Okay, because it can be towards me, it can be towards you also. If you join all these points, we'll have a three-dimensional shape, not a two-dimensional shape. So this will be spherical in nature. So the region around the source charge will be spherical. Okay. So one last point, with that we'll end this session. Electric field due to system of charges. So what are we going to do here? So it is other thing for, like how we discussed yesterday. We are going to speak only about principle of superposition. That is, if you want to find the electric field due to n charges present in a system, what method are you going to follow? You are going to add all of them using vectors or algebra. Principle of superposition mainly speaks only about vectors. Okay, so that's what the definition. So write down the heading as electric field due to system of charges. Electric field due to system of charges. If n point charges are present in a system, please write it down again. If n point charges are present in a system, the net electric field at a particular point, I repeat, if n point charges are present in a system, the net electric field at a particular point, the net electric field at a particular point is given as what? The vector sum of whom? Of the individual electric fields generated due to each charge. Please write it down. Is given as the vector sum of the individual electric fields generated due to each charge. Okay. So electric field due to multiple charges. So if I have charges Q1, Q2, minus Q3, like this, so on till Qn, and if I want to calculate the electric field at a particular point, okay, so till now we saw only two important mathematical equations. One is with respect to force, one is with respect to electric field intensity. Now tell me this logic to find force. Minimum number of charges that are required are minimum are 2. Whereas to find the electric field, the minimum number of charges required are only 1. Because what does the formula tell us? Electric field intensity due to a point charge is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into, look at your book and tell me, no, 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into Q divided by R square. So if you know the magnitude of one charge and if you know the distance at which electric field is to be calculated, that data is more than sufficient for you to find the electric field. Okay. I gave you no. This expression. No need. No need. That is a other derivation. So you will not derive that equation. There is a formula. This is the simplest derivation you would have ever seen. It is actually a derivation. Okay. So this is the formula. Q divided by 4 pi epsilon naught r square. You will not take the discharge into consideration at all. So going forward, whenever I ask you what is the electric field due to a point charge, by default it is the magnitude of the point charge divided by 4 pi epsilon naught r square. Where r is what? R is the distance from the point charge to the point where you are expecting the field. So whenever they frame question, no, this is the language they use. They will ask force between the charges. Okay, if they say electric field, they will not ask the question like what is the electric field between the charges. The electric field will exist at a point. So the preposition they use is electric field at a point, and for forces they use force between the charges. I hope you guys are able to understand. So that is why I mentioned, when I gave you the statement also, what is the statement I gave for electric field due to multiple charges? If n particles are present in a system, the electric field at, I use the word at, the electric field at any point. So underline that word at any point. That is how the question is supposed to be. Where if at all you see a question like this, electric field between the charges, meaningless question. Force at a point, meaningless question. Okay. So if this is the case, how many charges do I have in this particular system that I have drawn? Let me call it as 4 charges. So I have 4 point charges. No, due to each point charge, how many? So each point charge will have an influence of electric field at point P. Right. So if I have to find the electric field at point P due to Q1, Q1 is what kind of a charge? Positive or negative? Positive, because I have given a specific negative charge, so you need not ask me anything. So it will act along the line joining the charge and the point where you are trying to calculate the field. So the electric field is going to be away or towards? Away. So what do I name this as? This is the electric field due to the first charge at point P. Look at the way I'm writing it as E1P. It doesn't mean the electric field between point 1 and P. It is the electric field due to the first charge at point P. That is the meaning. Q2. You guys tell me that. E2P. My Q3. Due to Q3, it will attract. Meaning, if I keep a test charge here, the test charge will tend to move in this direction. That is the meaning. Okay, you have to imagine that there is a test charge, but you need not draw it every time. Tell me now. Won't the electric field? That's why we are using vector sum. That is what I was about to show you. So what do I name this as? Electric field at point, electric field due to the third charge at point P. So Q4, it is away. E4P. Is it possible for you to add them just like that? No, because they have direction associated. So the net electric field at a particular point is given as the vector sum of the individual electric fields produced by the charges at the point P. Purida? Am I clear? Yes? Okay. Students online?
Yes, sir.
Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is an important point. All the derivations we are going to see in the upcoming classes are dependent on this particular equation only. So have this point in your mind. The same resolution of vectors, same parallelogram, everything is the same. Okay. So with this I'll stop. So before next class, I want you all to go through vectors and then I want you all to be thorough with it, especially resolution of vectors, parallelogram law of vectors, and triangle of addition. You need to be clear with it.
Okay.
I hope there is no doubt from today's class, right? Okay. Then we'll wind up this.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Just a minute.